We're joined by Lynnwood City Council member Josh Binda, who made history by becoming the youngest Black person ever elected in Washington. Today on the left wing, we'll be discussing the controversial recall effort against Mr. Binda, which has been investigated and condemned by the NAACP. I'm Dr. Erica Okamoto of the Cocktails and Capitalism podcast, and I'm joined by my co-host Desmond Price of Independent Thought, as well as John Cooper of Counterpoint Politics. Welcome to the show, Josh. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you guys for allowing me to come on this platform and talk about everything. I'm excited for this opportunity, and I think this is going to be a great way to get my story out there and kind of talk about this and kind of, inform the public of what's been going on with my situation and kind of correlate it to not just how this is a theme with me, but just even on a national scale with BIPOC legislators that are currently having to overcome similar struggles as me. So I'm excited to come on here and talk about this and be a part of this. So whenever you guys are ready to start asking the questions and put everything out there, I'm ready to get started. I'm quite familiar with telling the story at this point. I feel like my life story, and so I've had to tell it so many times. So I'm excited to come on here and do the same thing.
Well, Josh, let's jump straight into it then. Like that Erica mentioned, you are young, like very young, like Gen Z, the vanguard of the next generation of politics, one of the youngest politicians in the country, a young Black man of color. And I guess, yeah, young Black men, most Black men are of color. But the point here is that when that happens, when that new generation starts to come in, there's two reactions. Some people see it as hopeful, exciting. They're excited about the future. Some people, however, see it as a threat. They see it as something that needs to be stopped. They see it as something that is going to hurt them. So as you entered into the world of politics, what did you see more of? Did you see more of the support or more of the people who were scared of you? And could tell some stories about both of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, before I dive into that, I'll tell a little bit, just an overview about my life story, a little bit of my history, so you understand a little bit about who I am, and I'll dive right into that question, answer that. So yeah, my name's, Josh Binda, like they said. I'm 23 at the moment. I live in Lynnwood, Washington. I'm originally from Providence, Rhode Island. I was born in Providence, Rhode Island. My family migrated to this country from Liberia. It's a country in West Africa. There were refugees going through a civil war at this time frame. In the late 1990s, they're slaughtering our people back there. And there's a lot of corruption within the government going on that my family felt they need to escape. And so they happened to win an international lottery visa during the same time period that this is going on, and were able to escape as refugees and came to, the U.S. with nothing but their clothes on their backs. And later on, I was born November 18, 1999 in Providence, Rhode Island. My mom and dad had split up during that time frame, probably when I was about 1 or 2. My dad kind of moved away to go to school and do his own thing, and ended up being raised, single mom before in the projects. We didn't have much. We struggled. There's definitely times, our lights got cut off. We didn't have food. There's a lot of gang violence, a lot of drug dealers, and that kind of stuff going on in our area. Grew up there for the majority of us in my young adulthood, and until I was about 14, 15. Not gonna lie, wasn't always the best kid on the block, wasn't always the best dude on the block. Definitely got into trouble in school, definitely had a potty mouth, definitely got suspended for fighting. Again, it was just kind of had nothing to do with who I was as an individual, but more had to do with kind of my environment and just kind of what I was surrounded with, and what I looked up to in that time frame was a lot different. I didn't have many positive role models at that time frame. Wasn't until I was about 14 years old, moved out to the West Coast out here, where I came to move in the city of Lynnwood, which I live right now, and basically been here ever since. There's a lot of things we'll get into about my activist background, all that later. But basically, that's kind of a little bit of my upbringing. Moved out here. We'll get into how I got involved in politics a lot later. But to answer your question, I would say it's very interesting. So the positive of people seeing me as coming in there and being hopeful, stuff like that. And this is why I think there's a huge, disconnect. The establishment saw me as a threat, saw me as, this person's coming here and to change things up. It's going to change that. So I was a threat to the establishment, but I gave hope to the people. And so there's the establishment where someone like me coming to office threatens how they do things, threatens how the system originally runs. They're not used to having someone obviously that's why I think intersectionality plays a huge part of all of this. You know, I'm everything, literally everything a politician shouldn't be. You know, young, you know, black, you know, I have tattoos, I wear earrings, you know, I'm very out there. My like it's everything that's against the status quo of a politician. And to the people, that gave them hope that wow, like you can be a regular person and get in these spaces and do these things. And like that's so cool to see someone that looks like me, looks like my children, looks like such and such in there. But to the establishment, it's a threat because now it threatens everything they say a politician should be and a politician should act like and all this and that. So then it threatens their positions because then people now they're under a microscope and like, okay, now that we have this person here that's not like us, people are going to compare him to us and see how he does things. And someone like me that's a regular person that doesn't have, you know, $1 million friends or a homeowner, all this and that, you know, when I'm making decisions, I'm thinking of all people and I'll bring all perspectives to the table. Whereas in a lot of these people, it's just a status quo thing with their good old buddies crew and keeping their homeowners and their best friends all in power and all have money. And so I think coming into it, I just realized that the establishment, the people in these positions, all that saw me as a threat. But the people themselves, the ones that actually vote, the ones that are actually putting in this position, saw me as a glimmer of hope. You know, that was kind of a weird, interesting thing because you think that, you know, these people in these positions that want the future, that say that they're always talking about, oh, we politicians, we're fighting for the future, for the youth, for our country, you know. But in reality, it's I realize a lot of that's all talk, you know, and a lot of it's just not really what they say it is, you know. And so I think that was kind of the intricate thing that I realized as I was getting into my position, you know, who was actually wanting me to be there and not. And I hope that answered your question.
Right, Josh. One of the things I want to ask you about is kind of like, you know, more or less the controversy that led you here specifically. You know,
Yeah.
so you are facing like a recall effort versus, you know, multiple accusations that have come your way through what it seems like, you know, people, you know, like from the city council itself, you know, people at local like newspapers where you're at in Lynnwood, Washington. So I want to just get to the bottom of exactly like how this all started, you know, what exactly is happening, what they're leveling against you, you know, particularly like you are being accused of recording a video in City Hall to promote your speaking tour, spending around like $3,000 on campaign funds and personal expenses, posting a shirtless photo on Instagram. Can't be doing that, Josh.
Scandalous.
And, you know,
And
so I want to ask you specifically, can you talk about
that was what sent them over the edge. that was the nail in the coffin.
So can you lay out this full picture for us? Can you talk about like one, these accusations particularly, and two, what exactly is going on with this recall method? How did it start and why do they say that they're coming after you more or less?
Oh man. This recall effort. Well, let's just start with the controversy. The controversy started before I was even elected, you know. Um Prior to my history, you know, before getting elected, I was a huge activist, well-known activist in our area in Seattle, Greater Seattle, Snohomish County area. You know, I led, you know, quite a bit of protests all across our state. I was a huge leader in our Black Lives Matter movement. I had a lot of, you know, community, a lot of support, a lot of momentum behind me. People would come out in the thousands to hear, you know, us talk about these, you know, things that we need to change legislatively, you know, with police brutality, with accountability, you know, with legislative reform on, you know, banning chokeholds and stuff like that. I was a huge leader in that movement out here in the Pacific Northwest. And because of that, you know, as I, you know, once I announced I was running for office, you know, it set a lot of dog whistles to, let's say, a lot of, you know, right-wing Republicans in our area that wouldn't want to see a Black Lives Matter activist, you know, in that position. But they didn't take me serious. They didn't take me serious. You know, when I announced I was going to run, I was a 21-year-old college student. I took a gap year, my junior year in college to run for office. No political experience. Yeah, no political experience. Didn't have my degree, but just had a passion, a wanting to make a difference, step up, to be a leader. And had things that I think our community, we needed more representation. We needed someone at the table that was going to actually be a voice of the people. And so I decided, you know, with what I was able to do, with the organizing I was able to do, to step up. And I was challenging a former, you know, incumbent, from a 3-time city council member who had never lost a race. Her name was Lisa Utter. You know, she was a, you know, Democrat, just like Democrat, you know. just like me, she,
We talk about the Democrats a lot on the
Yeah.
channel.
yeah, just like me, she had she had her master's degree from like Swarthmore. She was, had never lost a race. She was very well known in her community, but I felt like she didn't have the values of the people at her heart, and I felt like she didn't represent, who we were. So I ended up going up against her, in our election, and I remember, a lot of people thought this kid has no chance. I was out there campaigning, running a very grassroots campaign, was door knocking, consistently, was using social media as a huge platform, because if I was to win this race, I'd be the youngest person of color in state history and one of the youngest politicians in the country. So there's a lot of social media, presence on it. There's a lot of local, news stations and all that covering this race because of, the history that'd be behind it. But nobody had taken me serious. Really, I don't think she didn't put out a single yard sign. She didn't do a single bit of campaigning. To her, this is this 21-year-old, no chance. And so it wasn't until the primary election, which honestly, I remember going to the primary election. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, man, I don't as much as I was running a very great race, stuff like that, I'm going against the establishment. I'm thinking, if I lose, I just want to lose close. I just want to have a couple percentages, in between us. So if I'm going to lose this thing, I was like, I just want to lose close because, I knew I campaigned hard, but you just never know when you're going against, the establishment like that, what the people's take is going to be. And so to my surprise, when the election results came back, the final election, the primary election results was, I won, and not only did I win, I won pretty big. I got 45% of the vote, and there was two other people in the race, and she got 29%, and the other person got 28%. So I won by 16 points in the primary, which was huge. It shook the entire state's world. Everyone was like, "How the hell is this kid?" Like people were just shocked, that someone like me could do something like that against. It was a huge upset. And it wasn't until then that's when the right wing started sending their dog whistle after me, because then they saw, okay, this kid's actually a threat. Yeah, he could actually win this thing. So what happened was the owner himself of the Lynnwood Times is a guy named Mario Lotmore. He runs the Lynnwood Times in the area, and for disclosure, some background information on him. He is a registered Republican. He actually ran for Senate as a Republican back in 2018, lost, and now he runs his little right-wing rag called the Lynnwood Times in our community. That's what it is. To give himself some sort of authority, whatever. But once he saw that I won the election, him and there's another guy who's a former Lynnwood police detective. His name is TJ Brooks, and another guy who's notorious for filing Public Disclosure Commission PDC complaints. That's what they are. It's like when they can go into your campaign expenditures and find little things to complain about and do all that. A guy named Glenn Morgan. They started doing a dig deep into my campaign expenditures, into everything about me, seeing if they could find any dirt on me to try and come up with something, because they didn't think I was going to win the primary. And once I came out pretty big, then I all of a sudden became this threat that they was like, okay, this kid could actually win this thing, And so I sat down with my consultant. I sat down with my team. I said, we broke it down. I was like, look, I don't know what's going on. I've been hearing that, and I want to make this very clear. This is my first time ever running a campaign. I don't know nothing about no Public Disclosure Commission or what's campaign related, what's not campaign related. Or my team, for the most part, were high school students.
Wow.
That were out there grassroots with me. It was predominantly high school students. I think my campaign manager was 21.
Wow.
And the oldest person on my campaign team was my consultant, who's 40, and he was, running other races too. So it was a very youth-led movement, so none of us knew anything about these PDC complaints and, things we had to stand. So when I sat down with my consultant and we went over, and I think I raised the most out of, even our mayoral candidates in our cities and stuff like that. I think I raised about close to 30 grand for my campaign race, grassroots. And so we went over our expenditures and stuff like that. I was like, okay, we want to figure out what's campaign related, what's not campaign related, just so we could make sure that we were in, coherence with everything that the PDC says, so they can't nag us for anything. And so as we went through and stuff like that, it was okay, these are all considered campaign related. There's this certain amount here that, okay, maybe this is not campaign related, or maybe that's not. I was like, okay. I had no idea, what was deemed not, what was deemed so. And so I made a gesture myself personally to reimburse my campaign for anything was considered non-campaign related. This was done basically 2 months before, 7 weeks exactly, before any complaint was ever filed on me, anything was ever done. We already taken care of. We figured out what was considered non-campaign related and reimbursed our campaign. But because the Lynnwood Times owner and these guys had been doing their little digging our public disclosure commissions, trying to find anything they could, and I saw that we had reimbursed our campaign for certain amounts, stuff like that. The Lynnwood Times owner himself, the day of the ballots dropped, which for disclosure, the amount was about $2,700. That was considered non-campaign related that we reimbursed 2 months before any complaint was filed. And the complaint was filed by the Lynnwood Times owner himself and these buddies. And then the day the ballots dropped, in November, the Lynnwood Times drops an article, Josh Binda under investigation for upwards of $10,000 in campaign spend, like mysterious campaign expenditures. Like just threw out a number there. And like the whole goal of that was to try and get voters to not vote for me the day the ballots were coming out. And so it was a smear campaign. They were trying to run against me. And so I was getting calls all over the place, like, Josh, what's going on? What's this we're seeing? Lynnwood Times, are you having? I was like, I don't know what they're talking about. Up to like, first of all, like, there's nowhere near $10,000 of anything being spent. And I was like, second, this is already handled. This is already taken care of. We already reimbursed this with the PDC. I don't know why this is coming out when this is already something that we personally handled ourselves, with our own integrity. And so that had happened. Long story short, that wasn't able to stop me. I still got elected, made history, was able to overcome that. But there's a lot of these, like, basically since my entire campaign race up until now, the Lynnwood Times has been on my ass about any and everything. And like I don't think they've written a single good article about me, which honestly, like, I expected, I guess. But it started off with that. And when I overcame that, another thing happened where the whole thing you're talking about there was a whole thing with me filming a video in City Hall. And so I went on this school tour all across the state. It's called the Love Conquers All Tour. It's supposed to be very positive. I went to about 20 schools, spoke to about 20,000 students all across our state. It was partnered up with the school districts. They paid for me to come out to the schools. And the whole thing was us going out there to teach them the message of the importance of leading with love, how to be leaders now, how they're not too young to step up and be a voice and do good in their community. And it was a very positive thing. All the youth were super inspired. It got a lot of statewide, media and press, a lot of good notoriety. It was a very positive thing. But you have these jealous Republican haters that are seeing this young Black progressive getting all this press and it's positive and doing all this and that. And then, I think this is what really got them upset, because obviously at these schools, I'm going to, not all these kids come from progressive or Democratic households. A lot of them, some of them come from conservative, Republican households and stuff like that. And so you had all these kids going home like, oh my God, Mom, Dad, I met this super cool guy at school today. Like, and he came forward, he taught us about this and that, and he was super amazing. And there's like, oh, who are you talking about? And like, oh yeah, like Josh Binda, like from Lynnwood, like the progressive guy. And so the parents would search me up and see I'm this progressive, like Democratic candidate. And then I get emails from some of these parents like, how dare you come to our schools and indoctrinate our children with your progressive values and this and that. And like, we did not have our schools, our taxpayer dollars are not meant for you to come and indoctrinate us, our children, and you all that bull crap, And so that's what really made them upset. And so before I went on this tour, I filmed the video in City Hall. Basically, it was supposed to be an announcement video to the kids, basically saying, hey, I'm super excited. I'm coming on this tour to come speak to you guys. It's going to be fun. It's going to be like, I'm really excited to come out there and educate you guys about this and that, and basically help engage with the youth, make them excited that I'm coming there and such and such. And basically, I didn't know, but I found out that why after I'd done this, some of my council members and all of that had meetings with our city attorney behind closed doors to find out if I broke any rules or regulations or anything by filming that video in City Hall. And so I guess our city attorney had told them, I didn't break any state laws, I didn't break any city laws, but there's one thing in question, like our municipal code. We have a Lynnwood municipal code. I don't even know what the difference is between that and a rule or whatever, but it's a municipal code that city officials can't use city premises for their own personal gain or profit. And so the whole thing with this was they were trying to correlate the fact that I was getting paid from this tour, which I've been public speaking the last 3 years. This is part of my job that I do outside of council. Like, council doesn't pay us enough to be. I'm sorry, it does not pay us enough. Like, everyone has a job outside city. It's part time. Like our city council. Like, we're not making nowhere near. Like, everyone has to have a career outside, and this is part of my career and stuff like that. And I was already, the contracts with the school districts are already settled and done with. There's no, like, it was already set and done with the schools before this video was even filmed. The video was just alone just supposed to be an announcement to the kids for a mandatory assembly they had to go to. You know what I'm saying? And so our city council, once they heard from the city attorney saying that, I mean, I guess you could try and, see about this municipal code, but that's not something like you have to do. But I guess our city council, once they found out there's something they could nag me for, potentially, they took that and ran with it. And our next city meeting, I had no idea, but our council got there, and then I saw our Lynnwood Times reporter there and the Everett Herald reporter there, which is another, right wing kind of media. And I already knew once I saw them, I was like, oh crap, something about that. I was like, oh shit. I was like, damn it. I was like, what happened? And so they were there. And so basically our city council correlated with them. And at that meeting, our city council voted to take me up for investigation for potentially violating our city municipal code. And then you have in the papers, Josh Binda under investigation for violating his oath of office, or this, like, just completely,
Nothing says small town conservative values like getting all upset about a city municipal code, right?
Yeah. A city municipal code. And so that was what happened with that. And then the following meeting, it's like they were building up this movement the following meeting after that. So this was around the time I was finishing up my school tour. And so to commemorate to the tour, to all the people I inspired, to everything that had taken place because of such an amazing experience, I got the words "Love Conquers All" tattooed on my tricep here. And to commemorate to the tour, and so I did a photo shoot where it's a side shirtless photo. Which, if you go on my Instagram, I have shirtless photos dated back to 2018. It's not like this is off brand. This is not new for Josh Binda. This is me. I got elected with shirtless photos on my Instagram. Like, this is not new to me, And so, and this is one of the probably most least provocative shirtless photos I actually have. I'll say those photos are more provocative, if anything. If anything, none of them are meant to be provocative. But if you're gonna choose one, it's definitely not this one.
Yeah.
And so it was a side shot, that had the word, like, with the "Love Conquers All" tattoo showing, and it showed a little bit of side boob, I guess, and like my my upper body, and like my a side shot of my abs, and so and it was in the bio, in the thing, I talk about how much this tour meant to me and how much I was so inspired. I got the words "Love Conquers All" tour tattooed on me, and it was also supposed to be an announcement for my new public speaking business that I started earlier this year, which is now run through an LLC called Josh Binda Speaks LLC. So it's also like an announcement post of my new business that I announced as well. And for the most part, like, everyone was super happy about it. You read the comments, be like, "Congratulations, this is super amazing, dope, this and that." I'm like, people are receiving it pretty well for the most part. And then the following Monday, I see on the Lynnwood Times posted, Josh Binda sexually promotes himself to minors to promote Love Conquers All tour. And then I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Yeah.
Wow.
But are you like, really? How does your mind go to that off of a side shot of a shirtless? I don't understand how that even was processed. And if you read the article,
they were just too turned on by it. All those people that were outraged.
Somebody's wife or I don't know. Somebody's wife was probably turned on by it, and he got offended. I don't know.
So let me just recap all this here. You had a picture that you posted of yourself on Instagram, and they accused you of indoctrinating children for posting a shirtless photo. The money that the money that they claim that you spent, you ended up going back and reimbursing that, right?
7 weeks prior to even being a complaint,
right?
Like, almost 2 months.
And all these hit pieces are coming from the only newspaper in town owned by a Republican.
Owned by a Republican, Lynnwood Times owner. And so what happened once I posted that shirtless photo and stuff like that, and they came out with that article. The following week, there was like a group of 6 Republicans, where half of them weren't even from my even town. Well, I forgot to say, in the Lynnwood Times article, he writes public outcry. There wasn't no damn outcry. It was like if you go to the actual page, there's like 3 people talk about, oh my God, this is inappropriate, this is unacceptable. Like, and there's like 2 likes on the comment. And he tried to make it seem like it was some public, and you read the article, the references he used are his buddies.
Oh God.
Like, it's just like this, like they're creating this outcry that doesn't exist. Like, you go to the post, you read the comments, nobody was offended. Like, and so the next week, on our city council meeting, there were 6 Republicans that showed up, half of them not from Lynnwood, with T-shirts saying "Resign Binda now" and the Black Lives Matter logo. And they come to city council, and one by one they come up there and talk about how much of a disgrace this is, how much I'm asking kids to tattoo their names on their bodies, how I'm I'm sexually provoking myself to kids. And I'm like, first of all, kids can't get a tattoo until you're 18. There's no like I'm not asking no one to get like that. Like, there's no way it's illegal. Like I'm like, okay, you guys are going, I don't know, crazy.
Wow.
And somehow from that meeting ended up making it to our statewide news and stuff like that. That there's these parents infuriated about me. It's called Cairo 7 News. It's a pretty statewide local news here. And ended up making it on there, talking about asking me to resign and such and such. That's where this whole movement really started. And then that interview blew up on our meeting. I think it had in total over 1,000+ comments. 95% people were like, why the hell are they coming to this kid for beach? Like, have you ever been to a beach? Like, this is not a bit like, people are like, this is just some Karen, with some, having outfit or outcry about it because she's offended that someone else was shirtless and on their Instagram their kids would see, even though I'm pretty sure your kids have access to way more offensive out there things than my personal Instagram. And so that's what started this whole, recall effort against me. And they started trying to use that against me. And then this was another thing. This was one of the probably even bigger things that happened. And so there's something called the National League of Cities. It's a national conference that's held down in DC. It's a congressional conference. And it's held down there. Elected officials from all over the country go. It's like whether you're city council member, state legislature, such, they go down there to DC. There's workshops, there's guest speakers. Like the one I went to, Joe Biden spoke. Congressman Maxwell Frost is supposed to be there to speak as well, such and such, and all these things. And so, as a council member, we have a discretionary budget. I think for us here in Lynnwood, it's about $2,500 a year, which we can use to go on, conferences, go to such and such things, to many things that we see fit in order to, enhance us, to make us better at our position and such. And so, this contrast, intrigued me. It was something that I thought I'd want to do. And so I called my council assistant and let her know. I said, hey, like, I'm very interested in this National League of Cities conference. I'd love if you could register me. I'd want to go down there and be a part of it. It's something I'm very interested in. I said, oh yeah, like I'll register you. We'll pay for the flight and everything, the conference, and get that all handled. I was like, all right, perfect. That sounds great. Thank you. And she's like, yeah, I'll let you know when it's confirmed. And I was like, awesome. And so we hang up the phone, things are getting handled, settled and done. And then an hour later, I get a phone call from our council president, and her name's Shannon Sessions. And she's definitely Republican, right? Yeah. Shannon says she's definitely Republican, definitely, conservative on that side of things. And she's our council president, which, for disclosure on this, council president doesn't mean crap. Like all they do, the only thing they have more than any other person in the council is they set the agenda for the next week. You're all on the same level of power. You're all on the same level of authority. You're all elected officials. There's no authority over anyone as council president. And so she calls me, and I knew when she called me because she never calls me. So I knew when she called me, I was like, oh, this can't be good. And I was like, okay. She called me and she goes, hey, Josh, how's it going? I was like, hey, Shannon, you're having a good day so far. How's it going? And she goes, yeah, it's going good, stuff like that. And I was like, what makes me, deserve this phone call today? And she goes, oh, well, I just want to call you to let you know that you're not going to this National League of Cities conference. And I go, excuse me, what do you mean I'm not going to this conference? I called our council assistant, I got myself registered, like, pretty sure I'm going to this conference. She's like, well, you're not going because I'm telling you you're not going. And to me, you're not a council in good standing. And so I don't believe you should be going to this conference. So you're not gonna go. And I was like, well, Shannon, I don't think that's within your jurisdiction or your right to tell me as an elected official where I can or can't go and do with my position. I don't think that's in your jurisdiction. I was like, you know what? I'd actually like to talk to our city attorney about this because I don't think that's within your right to tell me what I can and can't do. And she goes, well, you're just ignorant.
Oh my God. What?
And you're not going because I'm telling you you're not going. And if you knew the rules, you know that. And if you'd like to go, I can try and put this on the agenda on Monday for the council to make a vote on it. But you don't want to do that because that'd be quote unquote embarrassing for you. Because she knows she'd have the majority of the council, the conservative council, to vote it down. And so I go, well, I don't think that's when you're right. And so I'm gonna talk to our city attorney and find out if that's something that you can even do and figure it out. And she goes, all right, well, good luck, and we'll see about that. And so, and the phone call there, and about an hour later, I get an email from our city assistant basically saying, per council leadership request, now that if you'd like to go on this trip, that we'd have to put on the agenda on Monday for a discussion with the rest of the council. And mind you, during this whole time period, we have another council member going to this trip, fully funded by the council. There's no approval. There's no approval process. There's nothing that she'd have to have it bring up to discussion with the council. None of that. And now we find out through our NWC investigation, she was actually even over budget to go, and they still paid for her to go. And so I was under budget. And so because like I was on such a short time frame to go to this conference and all of that, like I was like, you know what, like I don't want to have to go through the process of the city attorney and do all of that. I'm just going to register for this conference. I'm going to do it myself. I'm just gonna handle it on my own. And I'll figure out the rest later. So I ended up registering for the conference. I paid for it all up front, out of pocket. Paid for the conference, paid for my flight, paid for everything. And I didn't tell the rest of the council. I didn't tell the council leadership. I didn't tell anyone about it. And so I just did it on my own and ended up going down to DC. And so I went down there without, the council knowing what I wanted, because they don't have to know. I'm an elected official. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I went down there. It was a super amazing experience. And, I met a lot of elected officials. I had a really nice suit that I wore that everybody loved. It was like this very, one thing about me, I'm stylish, baby. I have my style. I'm going to show out, especially in DC. Oh, I'm going to dress up.
You're going to put a shirt on. It's going to be a nice shirt. It's
sure. And so I made sure I had brought my most, drippiest outfit, I could, So I set up down there, it was definitely eye-catching to a lot of people. I did a lot of the workshops with the adults, but a lot of my work that I'm very interested in, I'm very youth-oriented. I like, youth advocacy is one of my biggest things. So while a lot of most elected officials were there were also, low percent battery there. While my other percentages were there were also youth delegates for all across the country that were there as well at this conference, and they had their youth like workshops and youth meetings and stuff like that. So my interest, I was like, you know what, like I actually want to be more around the youth. I'm tired of these old politicians and all this stuff. I want to see what the youth's doing. So I ended up going down there, where the youth was at, participating in their workshops and stuff like that, and taking part of all the things they had going on. And ended up meeting them. And a lot of them, like, they started loving who I was. So, oh my God, like, you have a really dope suit. And like, I started talking to them, like, man, how old are you in your politics? I'm like, yeah, I'm 23, stuff like that. And I was able to, I understand that generation very much well. So I'm not too much older than them. So I was able to correlate with them, understand what they were going through, kind of talk to them about everything I was doing. And they just felt really inspired by me. And so I was able to connect with the youth a lot while I was there. And so, like I said, this is what was really cool. I think this was what really pissed off my council while I was there. So originally, for the youth delegates closing section, the congressman from Florida, Maxwell Frost, was supposed to come down there and be the keynote speaker for them. Something had happened, something had tripped up where he no longer could come. And so they were kind of like, I was kind of in their group where they were kind of discussing this, like, oh yeah, like Maxwell Frost can't make it and such and all that. I was like, man, we need someone to replace him. And I was like, oh, well, I do a lot of public speaking, and I'm also a Gen Z elected official, youngest in my state. If Maxwell doesn't come, like, I'd more than happy to take a spot. And I said, oh my God, like, yes, like, we love, like, if you could come up there and like, and speak. If he doesn't send us an email by the end of the night, tomorrow we'll make sure you're the guy. And so that night, I went back to my hotel. I was praying. I was like, please don't come, Maxwell. Please don't come, Maxwell. I was like, I love it. It was like a hit or miss. I was like, I want to meet him, but also like, I want this opportunity,
Yeah.
And so the next morning came. There's like, yeah, like we didn't get an email back from him. You're our guy. So we'd send us all your information, your bio, and all of that, and we'll have you coming out to speak for us for the National League Cities. I was like, cool. And so I ended up being the keynote speaker for the youth delegates closing session for the National League of Cities. And I gave a killer speech. The youth from all across the country loved it. I was the only politician they gave a standing ovation to. And they ended up collaborating with me afterwards. Like, they wanted pictures and wanted all this and that. And I'm still connected with a lot of those youth delegates even now. And some of them even interning for me right now, which is really cool. But the big thing that happened was the National League of Cities themselves ended up posting me on their Twitter page about, me coming down there and speaking, saying, Councilman from Lynnwood, Washington, Josh Binda coming down here, like spoke at the National League of Cities and gave inspiring and our council ended up finding out because they saw it on their social media. And so like they tried to block me, and then I ended up going down there and replacing Maxwell Frost as a keynote speaker.
Oh my God.
And
Oh, wow.
like bringing a lot of light to our community, to our city. It was a huge positive thing. And so when I came back, they were pissed. They were pissed off about that.
God forbid you represent the city on the national stage.
God. Yeah. And so when I came back, our council next meeting, they had it on the agenda for the council members that went to the National League of Cities to talk about it, but they kept me off the agenda, and they only had the other council member on the agenda to talk about it. And so because they didn't want me to talk about it. And so I was like, okay, all right. And so the meeting starts, and like I made it in my council comments. I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I just wanted to make it known that I went down to the National League of Cities. I spoke down there, replaced Maxwell Frost. It was an amazing experience. And actually, I'm also coming back here because I'd like to publicly request a reimbursement for my trip for me that went down to the National League of Cities because I found our other council members were paid to go down there, and I had to pay for it myself. So I publicly requested.
Who looks embarrassed now?
And so I publicly requested this reimbursement, and oh my gosh, our council president was pissed off about it. And so when it's her turn to speak, she goes on there and speaks, and she's like, I just want to say that Josh Binda was not approved to go down there to the National League of Cities. He will not be getting reimbursed. He wasn't a keynote speaker down there. He was at most maybe a panelist, but he was not a keynote speaker. And that he went to DC for his own selfish gains, coming back to request taxpayers pay for his trip and all of that. And so she was publicly saying all these things. And then it ended up getting into our local paper, and from our local paper to our statewide media. Josh Binda goes on personal trip to DC and coming back requesting taxpayer dollars to pay for his trip. And so there's the whole thing going on with that. And it's all misinformation, all lies. And I sat down with our city assistant, our mayor, and I said, we went over our travel policy and everything. And our travel policy, it says to each council member's own discretion. They go to wherever meetings they want to, wherever conferences they want to. There's no approval process. So she basically made up this lie, made up all this and that I went on this thing and all of that. And she was trying to get my reimbursement rejected as well. So our following council meeting, we had youth delegates come in. I had youth delegates coming from all across the country, came in, zoomed in our meeting and testified that I was a keynote speaker down there, that they don't know why our council is trying to lie and discredit me and such. And also our city assistant, our city attorney even said this was within Josh every right to go to this conference. And technically, according to our city rules that we have here, our travel policy, he should be getting reimbursed because he should have been paid to go in the first place. There's no approval process. And so even with all that happening and all that transpired, all the evidence, testifying, me being testified, being all of this that happened, our council president made a motion that she still, to the opinion of the council, that my reimbursement be rejected by the finance director. and it got approved in a 5-2 vote. That even though it was within my right, even though I should have been reimbursed, that they made it the opinion of the council. They were basically trying to influence the finance director, not reimburse me, even though it was within my rights to be reimbursed for the trip.
Wow.
Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So
And they
you
made
end up
him.
getting reimbursed.
I ended up getting reimbursed. I ended
Wow.
up getting
Good.
Screw them.
Very good.
screw that. Yeah, but that was when the segue when the NAACP got involved, because that's when this whole recall effort started coming into play with them, because all this misinformation they were putting on lies. So yeah, that's what triggered the NAACP to get involved. And yeah,
we're gonna ask you about that. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But before we jump into that, I just wanted to say, like, on this show, I talk a lot about settling things like it's two kindergartners having a fight, right? And if you look at this like it's two kindergartners having a fight, one side, which side is more likely? Who's more likely to be the kindergartner who's lying? The one who is a who took a year off of college to become a city council member that doesn't get paid shit, who's apparently using his platform to show tattoos of himself to children and go on lavish vacations to Washington, D.C., or the failed politician who now owns a newspaper who's politically opposed to the ideas that person represents. Who do you think has greater incentive to be lying? It's so clear and obvious, and it does stun me that, like, it's not very clear to every single person who looks at the story, even when it's from the biased newspaper reporting.
And that's the thing. I think it just goes to show how a lot of people are locally, at least, are politically checked out. You know, like people people had no idea. People don't know who this guy is, Mar-a-Lago. They don't know he ran as a Republican. They don't know. They just see the Lynnwood Times. Oh, okay. Like, people aren't as politically engaged at the local level as they are. I would say there are, like, look, we have a whole presidential race, and the voter turnout is still low for even the highest level of politics.
Yeah.
You know, as in the local lower levels, you know, people just aren't engaged. They don't understand, like, the behind the scenes, like, corruption, even at the local level there is, you know, until it's exposed, like stories like mine, you know, but not every story like mine gets out there. And so I think it became more obvious as once the NAACP became involved in investigation, and it really brought a lot of those, you know, things to light that people weren't seeing prior to that.
So, Josh, you mentioned there that the NAACP got involved. Could you tell me a little bit more about, you know, we kind of see why it happened. Obviously, this is a crazy story, and I understand why the NAACP would want to get involved in it, but what did they do, and what was the outcome of that?
Yeah, so and after all that happened, there was a third party I didn't reach out to. The NAACP got reached out to a third party who concerned with what was happening with me, and then NAACP reached out to me. And after I kind of broke down to them what had been transpiring, what's been happening, the NAACP said, "All right, we'll take this and we'll investigate it." So what the NAACP did was they did a public records request from all council members, all their emails, all their communications within each other, within all, just in general, over the last 2 years. They did requests with emails, they did interviews with staff, they did interviews with council members, they did interviews with community members. They did a whole investigation to find out what was happening and if there's any targeting or discrimination that was happening towards me. And so that's kind of what happened and what transpired. What we found through that, there's actually emails dated even 2 years ago. This is what that got exposed. There's emails dated 2 years ago, the day that I won my election. Basically from my council president, Shannon Sessions, to the entire staff, to the entire council, basically saying, okay, now that Josh Binda's won his election, because they didn't expect me to win, we need to start the process of setting up an ethics committee, an ethics board, basically that the same they weaponized against me 2 years later. Because they were she didn't like the fact that they didn't expect me to win, and she liked the fact that I got elected. And so they were already plotting how they were gonna, you know, weaponize their attacks against me the day that I got elected. And there's email chains of her spreading misinformation in media about me, about this and that, and just putting out lies to that later got published about me, that further discredited me and what I was doing. And so through the investigation, the NAACP concluded through that, through the emails, through the interviews, through what they found with our city policy, our rules, and our regulations, all the things that she had broken, and they had broken as council with that, and that there was a clear targeting and effort against me, collaborating within our council, with the media, and with these people, this recall committee, which the recall committee is actually led by a guy that was a former Lynnwood Times employee as well. His name is DL, and he also ran for state senate as a Republican in 2018, lost, and city of Lynnwood council, my position, in 2019, and lost. And so
Lynnwood Times just loser central, isn't it?
It's a bunch of hating, spilled Republicans that are trying to take me out because they couldn't do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then you have people, yeah. And so basically, at the NWSP, we held a statewide press conference, and we'll state media all over the place and everything like that, and we basically exposed all the information and concluded that I've been targeted and discriminated against as a plot by my council and certain media outlets and people to unseat me as the sole progressive on our council. And so that was what was concluded from the investigation. It was a pretty long investigation. It took a couple months, and it was honestly sad to see the information that we got from that. And then also we had found out recently, currently, our council president, her husband and treasurer, was donating to the campaign to recall me out of my office. They donated almost about a third of their funding was coming from the vice president to call me out of my position. And so it was a whole collaborative effort from people in the establishment and these recall people, failed Republicans that were upset that a young progressive person like me won my seat.
I just wanted to quickly add that I learned that Shannon Sessions, city council president, is a former police officer who has her own nonprofit that partners with local police, and she uses her position in the city council to advertise and basically make these connections. So these accusations that she is lobbying against you about using your position somehow to profit personally, when they're talking about basically nothing, no profit there, it's so absurd on its face when you hear the kinds of stuff that she's actually engaged in personally.
And she's the only, from what I've heard, I'm not facts, but from the last I heard, she's the only paid staff in our nonprofit, in her paid position.
She is.
Yeah.
That's she is.
For this for her nonprofit that she's running with the police. And then you have a former Lynnwood police detective that filed a PDC complaint against me, and also is helping lead the charge for this recall effort. So who do you think's all collaborative? It's all, it's all their inner works,
Totally. Well, this is a great kind of segue to a kind of more positive topic about just your activism that you've engaged in. I just wanted to ask you about how, before running for city council, you were a Black Lives Matter activist. And I was wondering if you could tell us how you got inspired to kind of organize BLM protests and rallies, and how that activism kind of led you to the position that you're in now.
Man, okay. I tell people all the time, I never saw myself as an activist until I became, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't something that I like planned or stuff like that. I just felt in my core heart, when I started seeing things, when I guess once I got awakened to how unjust our system is, specifically our police system is towards BIPOC individuals. There was something in me that couldn't stay away from it, that couldn't ignore it. For so long I felt like I just continued to live my life, and I knew what was going on was wrong. I knew that I saw was wrong, but I didn't feel the urge to make a difference, because I guess I thought I was too young, and two, I didn't think that my voice really could make a difference in something that's so worldwide. I mean, not worldwide, it's countrywide, like a problem. I was like, what am I gonna do? But it wasn't until that I truly felt it in my core, especially with the whole George Floyd situation that happened.
Yeah.
You know what? I can't sit back any longer. I don't care if I go out there and if it's just me protesting, if it's just one voice or 100 voices, I want to do my part, you know, to be a leader in something like this and be a voice in something like this. You know, in high school, I was a leader all around. You know, I was a state track athlete, I was a football captain. I did so many things that are leadership wise, and I think for me, once I saw something like this happening, you know, and something that actually matters in the world, you know, that actually makes a difference in the world, it was hard for me to see, you know, my fellow brothers and sisters out there advocating, fighting for it, and me being like, I'm at home, okay, I'm gonna be safe, you know. And honestly, a big part of my personality, who I am, I'm just a risk it all kind of dude.
Awesome.
I'm just like, I like to say, I'm pretty badass. Like
Cheers to that.
not afraid to, not afraid to step up. I'm not afraid to be the change. I'm not afraid to stand alone or stand with many. You know, I think that's a very strong asset to me. And so I think I decided that I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to step up and be a voice and be a change. And so I remember organizing like my first very protest. It was in a very white supremacist town, that area, in the homish. And I did not think many people were going to show up. I didn't think many people were going to. I remember going down there and thinking, you know, I'll be happy if maybe even 50 people come, maybe, or less, you know, show up to this, because we need to fight. We need to make our voices heard. If for too long, our voices have not been heard or brought to the table, and things like this has been happening. You know, obviously it goes back to Emmett Till, it goes back to now, like it's still happening, you know? And so every generation, I feel like, has had a leader step up and be a voice to keep things going, to people step up to be a voice. I was like, our generation, we need that. My generation, we need those voices now. You know, that's the only way things are going to propel forward. And I was like, why not me? You know, why not I step up? Why not be one of those voices in something like this, you know? And so I remember I decided to step up, led my first protest in downtown Snohomish in our area. Like I said, I didn't expect many people to show up, but over 600 people ended up showing up.
What? Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Wow.
Holy crap. I remember walking down the road and just seeing 600 people like down the road. And even though I organized it, I didn't plan on actually leading it. Like I brought a bullhorn, and I was like, oh, like, who wants it? And there's like, Josh, like, you organize it, you lead it. And I was like, okay. So I ended up leading it. I ended up like leading the march, and I ended up actually giving a speech, my first speech, afterwards. You know, everyone sat down and listened to it. And then I remember going home after that thing. It's like, you know what, Josh, job well done. You fought, you made your voices heard, you did what you felt in your heart to do, you're good. And I'm getting home, and as I get home, and I didn't check my phone all day, it was on D&D, and I opened my phone, and my phone was like blown up with like videos and like tags everywhere, stuff like that from my speech, from the march, everything like that. That was getting it was all over social media. It's like it was such an inspiring moment, such an inspiring speech, this and that. And then all of a sudden, I was getting text messages and emails from other cities, from other mayors saying, "Hey, we'd like to meet with you. We'd like you to actually host a protest in our city." So I sat down and met with another city, like a couple other cities, their mayors, their city officials. They sat down with me in their offices. Was like, "Hey, Josh, like I'm 20 at this point. Like, hey, Josh, like we saw what you did down there, Snohomish. We'd love you come down here and do something similar in our city." And so I was like, okay, like I could do that. And so I ended up driving around with like the staff, like with the city mayor, stuff like that. There's like, okay, what streets do you want blocked off? Where do you want the podium at? Where do you want? I'm like, what is happening? Are they asking me? What is happening here? I'm like, am I becoming this like leader in the movement? And like, it just became like a thing. And then did one in another city. I think we had like 3,000 people show up. And we it was multiple speakers that I spoke, like inspirational, and that just became a thing where I was getting called all over the state to be leader. And it's like, I just stepped up when it mattered, you know? It wasn't something that I planned. It wasn't something that I truly initially, like, I was going to be this. It's just what I became, you know, when I realized my voice. And then after that, you know, once I said I got involved in the community, became the chair of our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Commission for the entire city of Lynnwood, started doing diversity, equity work for our city, started really finding out what the issues are, you know, finding how we can make it more diverse. I started just getting involved, volunteering at the food banks, just doing more things community oriented, try and help the people as much as I could. And with all of that I had built up with the momentum from the activist, like to this day, I walk around the people in other cities and they're like, "Oh my God, you're that one guy that led that protest for you." I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." And it's like impact like that in the world, never, like, people don't forget that, you know? And so I would say that was definitely how my rise to becoming a huge BLM activist became. And then all of a sudden I became this voice, you know, for a generation of leaders that were advocating for this Black Lives Matter movement. And as I stepped into it, I realized how much, like, I was needed to be in that movement. I was needed to be in that movement, you know? It wasn't, and I think that's what made, like, I think, like I said, that's what made it so, like, such a great experience and such a great thing, was it was organic. It wasn't like, I need to be the hero, I'm gonna step up and be that. But I became the hero as through my heroics. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, as I was doing it, I became the one stepping up in that position, to do that, to lead it. And as much as I did, I was like, man, this is what I need to be doing. You know, this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to be. This is where I'm led to. You know what I mean? And and a lot of the things I advocate, I started all of a sudden having sit down, you know, Zoom meetings with our state legislators talking about police brutality bills and bans. They're asking me what I'm like, how the hell did I end up here at 20 years old talking with our state legislators about, you know, how they can make their police brutality bill bans better? You know, like,
Fuck
holy
yeah.
crap.
Shows how clueless they must be.
Yeah.
And so
They ain't clueless. They're talking to Josh Binda, man.
Yeah,
Who else
it's
would
not
you ask?
clueless anymore.
Yeah.
and so it was very organic, and it was very in the moment, but I stepped up when I needed to step up and became what I was meant to become, which led to me being where I am now. Like I see me running for office, it wasn't something that I planned, it wasn't something that I knew I was going to be. I didn't know how to campaign, I didn't know I was even going to be a great legislator, but as I stepped up and as I kept doing it, I was like, man, I'm built for this stuff. Like, I know, I don't know how I'm doing, but I know how I'm doing it. Like, I'm doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was one of those things that felt natural. You know, it felt like it was meant to be. You know, and I think that's the best way I could describe it. You know.
I love that. I mean, and I love how it really makes the work that you've done and the fact that you just stepped into it without like premeditation really makes it much more accessible for other folks to kind of hopefully follow in that path, because it's so important that younger folks get energized and get plugged into being change makers in the world and being leaders.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
what
but I was just going to say that story is so inspiring, and that's exactly why all the shit is coming down on him in order to tell the other people who might be inspired to do what he's doing. Hell, you don't want to work. You don't want to do this. We'll put you through this. And Josh, you're doing a great job of saying, well, I can take it. And
Yeah.
it's very inspiring to everyone. I can't imagine anyone listening to this story and going like, I can imagine them disagreeing with your politics. I can't imagine them disagreeing with you as a person.
I appreciate that. Yeah, well, it's inspired a lot of people. I still have countless DMs and messages of young and old people saying, "Man, I'm just an inspiration to," like, it's one of those things that I think about it as someone that's 23 and stuff like that. It's hard for me to be inspired by other people. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's like all of us, like, we all see each other as humans that do stuff like that. So to find another person that inspires you, especially for me being as young as I am, to be an inspiration to young and old people, to say I'm inspired by you, it to me it speaks volumes more of who I am and what I'm doing. It's a lot bigger than me. It's not just about, this is just me, Josh Binda, getting on the city council and doing the work. It's about what I represent. It's about what a demographic of people that have been, you know, shunned, that have never had a voice, that never had like a place at the table, finally feeling like something gives them hope that represents them. You know, that like, it's all about hope. You know, and I think that once you can instill that hope into people, you instill inspiration. It's a lot more. I think that's why I'm a huge threat, because I realize a lot of these people in these positions, they're regular Joe Schmoes. No one even knows who Shannon Sessions is from Lynnwood. Like, nobody knows who she is. Like, in the real, even in our own city. But then I can go to multiple cities and people know who Josh Bennett. It has nothing to do with the position. It has to do with the hope and the inspiration you bring on people. That's what sticks. That's what's powerful. Titles, I realize titles aren't powerful at all. Most people don't even know who are freaking senators and representatives here in our city, but they know who Josh Bennett. And that when I realized that, that's why I'm such a threat, because not only do I have a position of power, but I also have something that's way more powerful than anything a title could be. And that's like, I'm inspiring. I bring people hope. I bring people a sense of like, that's something we want, you know? as a genuine thing, and not just a vote. I'm not just a vote on a ballot for people. When people vote, like, are genuinely happy to vote for me because they're like, this person's gonna be a difference maker. You know, that's what they're scared of. That's really what they're scared of. And so yeah, that's a little bit more into that. You know, when you can bring that out of people, when you can inspire people, you can bring change to this world. I wholeheartedly believe that. And change that some people want, change that some people don't want, but it's change that's necessary. That's how I see it.
Hell yeah, that's beautiful. So beautiful.
That was a little poetic. I give it.
when you said you got sometimes, I forget exactly what you said, but you're like, sometimes you got to stand alone in order to stand with others. That was damn poetic.
Definitely poetic.
We're gonna put it on a shirt for you.
Please do.
Josh, I was just wanting to ask you why you think it's so important that you fight back against these accusations and this recall effort.
Because they ain't true.
Totally. Totally.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, all right, let me say, because they're not accurate. And clearly I think this is something that I've realized, like I said, it's a lot bigger than me, why I'm doing this. Honestly, like I said, I could resign today, walk away from politics, and make way more money and do a lot more. I'm 23 years old. I can go back. I can do a lot more with my life, you know, and just walk away from this. But because I've realized how big this is, how much bigger than me, what I'm doing, what I represent is, if I walk away, if I let these people think they can do this to me and take me out as the youngest person of color ever get elected, stuff like that, all those people that are inspired by me, people are gonna lose hope. You know, it's gonna change things. It's gonna make people feel like people that look like me, that act like that are like me can't be in these positions, and that's not true. Me being in this position, seeing where I've done more than my jobs even had me. I've gone above and beyond. I've been incredible at my work, actually. I think that's part of the reason why I'm such a threat. But because of that, it's also made me a target, you know, and because of that, people need to see that people, like, you can't just do this stuff to us, because this doesn't just happen in just the political world. This happens in corporate. This happens in all types of business, all workspaces. People of color feel, you know, they can't stand up for themselves because of what the retaliation is going to be, you know, when they actually have to stand up and be a voice for all the things they go through. So they put up with the abuse, they put up with, you know, the targeting, they put up with, you know, the shunning, they put up with all these things in their work field, all because they're scared to lose their position, you know. And like I said, I'm not scared to lose my position. My influence goes beyond politics, so I'm a fight.
Pain, you should anyway.
You know, and so, like, at the end of the day, like, I'm not afraid to show people, no, when you go through stuff like this, when you are being discriminated against, when you're being targeted, you let them know you're not going to tolerate that, and don't be afraid of what's going to happen. You stand up for yourself. You stand up, and you stand up for what's right. You know, and that's what I'm doing. I'm standing for myself. I'm standing for what's right. I'm standing for the people that have gone through my same experience and feel like I hope this inspires people that when you're dealing with these racist, white supremacists in whatever industry, you stand up for yourself, and you don't let them feel they can take you out of your position. And you don't let them feel, and you know your value enough that even if that somehow does happen, you know you're going to do something bigger and better for yourself because you're valuable. And that's what it comes down to. I'm valuable. And whether that's in the city of Lynnwood, whether that's anywhere else. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to fight back. I'm going to beat this recall. And I'm going to do bigger and better things, you know, regardless. That's how I see it. And I think it's bigger than me. It's not just for me. It's for the next generation that comes after me, that look up to people like me, that want these certain positions. Me giving that hope, I'm not gonna walk back on that now. It's too much more than me for me to think that I could just, it'd be selfish of me to, like, just say, you know, I'm just gonna let this go. You know, it's not within me at this point to think that that's all I want. Like, I want to walk away from this because this is too much. No, I think I represent something that's a lot more. And because of that, I'm willing to withstand the test of time and put up a fight to maintain what I'm meant to, where I'm at, where I got elected to. I'm an elected official. People chose me, not the system, not the establishment. They're not going to tell me whether they want. You can not want me here or not. It's not your choice. It's the people's choice. And So you can either get with the program or you can step aside and let my generation be the change we want to see. Period.
Okay.
You know, and that's
Fuck
how I
yeah.
see it.
You know, it's amazing when I first came across your story, and we want to send a shout out to our friend Sadia, who, you know, first put out the
Yeah.
video, and that's how I came across your story originally. And I'm just floored at all the different things that you have to experience. You know, I mean, you told me that you've been stalked, you're getting hate
Oh yeah,
mail.
dog
There's
hate,
a car driving around with a mobile like billboard on it.
mobile billboard. It says recall Binda now. They have their T-shirts.
Yeah.
Recall their website. You know, they
Yeah,
had
you
a
have your car got stolen.
car got stolen.
Like
What?
That
so many things you've had to put up with. And now there's this recall effort, right? Which they're trying to gather signatures in your community. About they need 3,000, and if they get it by December, there's going to be a special election held in February, right? So
should be
you are personally trying to raise funds to defeat this recall effort. Can you, like, as we're closing out here, can you tell us a little bit more about that fundraising, particularly you're trying to do for this?
Yeah, so basically, just to say I ran a very grassroots campaign my first time around. You know, I don't have, big donors that I can rely on. You know, I'm 23, still a pretty young person. Most of my friends are broke college kids, you know. And
Yeah.
so for me, I'm fundraising right now just in case that I have to run this campaign, this recall campaign in February. I'm gonna have to basically campaign all over again, which is going to cost money. You know, send out flyers, yard signs, do a whole bunch of, press and paid stuff out there to make sure my name's out there for my constituents to vote for me. And so right now I'm fundraising. My website's retainjosh.com. There's a fundraising donation link on there. You can donate. Any amounts help. You know, it would really be helpful in my situation to help me basically retain my seat here. And so that's what the whole fundraising aspect is for, is to prepare me to go up against potentially and know another I have to run another campaign basically.
Okay. And yeah, that's definitely important for anybody who's listening. You know, please, we'll have a link in the description of this episode for those who want to go ahead and donate to the fundraiser. Josh, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it. You are actually our first elected official coming on the show. So we appreciate
Yeah.
you gracing the left wing like that. And, you know, best of luck to you trying to defeat this recall, and, you know, hoping to get you back on the show in the future.
Oh yeah, I would love to, and thank you guys. It's an honor being, y'all first elected official. You know, I'm hoping that I'm one of the first few of many, and I'm hoping you guys continue to grow and use your platform from things like this. So I really appreciate, you guys' time, effort, and yeah, this was really fun, and really great opportunity, and I'm just grateful. So thank you guys.